All right, everybody's cozy in, coming in. Did everyone have a good dinner? Woohoo! Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad to see you all came back from dinner and you're all happy and rested. And how many of you went to Jose's Fire? Good. It was pretty awesome, wasn't it? Right. So I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce one of my very, 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 very best friends. This is the man that has been so gracious with me. He started a radio program called Awakening Code Radio, and he so sweetly has invited me to co-host it with him. And it's such a privilege to do that. He and I have been taking people out to the Integratron for quite some time and doing sound experiments and co-creation experiments and really giving people a flavor for what sound and frequency can do as a healing element to our bodies. And Eric, in this presentation, makes everything make sense, even for people with simple minds like mine. I could never repeat what he shares because it's really hard for me to really express how he expresses it. That's his unique gift and talent. And I am so excited for all of you to experience his presentation tonight. So how about a big, warm round of applause for Eric Rankin.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. It has been a journey, Michelle. I wouldn't be standing here doing what I'm doing if not for Michelle. She first mentioned the Integratron to me. So much of what we've done, she was on the first Awakening Code radio program with me, just there as moral support as I was spazzing out with all the buttons and levers and things. And it has been a miraculous journey for sure. And even this sonic geometry, which I'm going to share with you, this is 5 years worth of research that I have been doing out at the Integratron and other ways. It has allowed me to work with some of the world's top physicists who have been attracted to the sonic geometry videos. Every day, about 3,000 people watch one of the sonic geometry videos, just day by day by day. So, and I hear from people all over the world every week. Someone asks me a question I have no idea how to answer because they're real physicists and mathematicians and music theorists and everything else. But I am going to hopefully give you a very approachable bunch of information, and I hope that you have at least 2 or 3 like holy crap moments where you just go, this cannot be. And if I do my job right, that will happen. So Michelle is going to be my remote control since I don't have one for the video. And I'll just be saying next slide to Michelle. And here's Morpheus from, oh yes, I have to stand over here now. Morpheus from The Matrix. We're going to reference a few movies because it's science fiction often that plants the seeds for things that eventually become science fact. Yeah, Star Trek. I just was reading a book, The Physics of Star Trek. I mean, the idea of sending a man to the moon or in outer space in a rocket ship was imagined way before that was ever reality. Jules Verne imagined a nuclear-powered submarine in the 1800s. So I like referencing movies when I think they're tapping into maybe someone might call the Akashic Records or a deeper bed of knowledge, just as a tip-off, and then maybe expand from those. So the first one I have is Morpheus from The Matrix, and of course he's offering us the option of taking the red pill or the blue pill. And before he offers that to Neo, he says, you know that you think something surrounds you, that there is a deeper reality, a different essence to everything that you have a feeling of, but you don't know exactly what it is. And instead of being something scary like in The Matrix, the true matrix of life is something beautiful and truly connected to everything. So if you guys are all ready to take the red pill with me, y'all ready? Because we're gonna go 45 minutes down a very deep rabbit hole I hope it means something to you as we stop along the way. I'm happy to answer questions after the presentation. So, next slide, Michelle. Here's a favorite quote of mine from Einstein. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. This is from a book he wrote called The World as I See It. And people thought that Einstein wasn't a religious person. He was born Jewish and he was religious. And he even imagined a day if the unified field theory of physics, where the smallest thing was connected to the biggest thing, we wouldn't even need physics anymore. We would understand at a core level of how we truly are connected to everything. And we hope to expand on that tonight. One way that I imagine Einstein's verse is not, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. To me, it's coincidence is the intelligent universe's way of communicating with itself. And the device of that universe communicating with itself is you. You are the transducer that takes this information out here and processes it through your awareness and delivers it back into the field. So that's the way I imagine what Einstein was kind of trying to say. And we are going to look at a lot of coincidences. So just a teeny bit about me. When I got interested in frequency, it was because of a book I wrote called The Aquarians. I had to learn a lot about dolphins and whales. For some of you that are going out with Michelle and I tomorrow on the 2 boats, dolphins and whales are frequency masters to the level that we can't even possibly imagine. They have a physiological capability. We learn from them. When we talk about ultrasound of firing frequency into a woman's womb and seeing a fetus, that's dolphin technology. Dolphins actually use frequency to see through tissue into membranes, receive a picture back into their mind, and hold that as a digital file, possibly for centuries or even millions of years. These non-degrading files of information that are video, taking sound and turning it into video. So I had to learn a whole lot about frequency and dolphins in my research, and that tipped the scales on, oh my gosh, there's so much here to frequency. When I was learning about dolphins, an amazing experience I had. This is a wild dolphin. Wasn't trained anything. It was captive, but it was wild. It wasn't trained to do anything. This is in Key Largo, Florida in about the mid-90s. I've since swam with dolphins all over the world, wild, tame, and penned, and everything else. But this dolphin, we had a real bond. I don't know how it happened. Her name was Sarah, and she was an adolescent. And as I was swimming with a group of people, this dolphin swam out about 10, 15 feet away from me, turned to face me, and pulsed first what I could hear, this zzz, and then into the realm that I could not hear, but I could feel. And it felt almost like I was being lightly electrocuted a little bit. And I said, I felt like I'm receiving a healing from this dolphin. And I was buzzing internally. It felt like my cells were being aligned. And I had been taking coursework in Healing Touch International. It was a 2-year program I was taking. And I said, I wonder if I could do an exchange, a healing energy exchange with this dolphin. So I took my training, and all I did was reach my hands out into the open water, and she swam up to them. I get choked up. And just laid there for about 3 minutes, as long as she could hold her breath, and receive that. It was an amazing thing. Next slide. Oh, that's too long. So some of you know that Michelle and I host the show, Awakening Code Radio. We have some fans of the show here. Suzanne Holt from Virginia. I took her out for a little tour of Laguna during dinner break. And she's like, oh, you did this, and you know that, and you're coming from here, and all this. It's like somebody else who knew my life better than I did. So, thank you. But tune in if you can't catch our show live Tuesday nights, streaming, podcast. You can find us on iTunes very easily. Google search, Facebook search, Yahoo search, anything you will find our show. We call it Conversation to Raise the Vibration. We've had amazing guests. We've been doing it for over 5 years. We've had Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Greg Braden, Nassim Haram, and Masaru Emoto, the water scientist before he died. I mean, so many incredible people. Chief Golden Light Eagle. We've had incredible guests, and you can scroll through our podcast library and find something, listen to it anytime you like. I also, like Michelle, we host events out at the Integratron. This is a typical group. I take 44 people out there. It's a day-long event. We start at noon. We end at around 7:30. We go very deep into the story of this frequency machine. that was built by a man named George Van Tassel, supposedly with the assistance of extraterrestrials. And it all ties into the story I'm going to tell you. And it's a story that I was not expecting to find as I dove into the math, the geometry, a little tickle of a download. And the last thing I thought it was going to introduce me to was the ancient alien theory or story. And I'm a fan of the series Ancient Aliens. I just was not expecting this information to guide me to the ancient alien story. And this is where it all begins. 5 years ago, I literally, so this is the video that I produced. We made one. I got some information. I wrote down some information I showed Michelle one day. I was so excited about it. She thought I was Rain Man and going crazy because it was a bunch of symbols and numbers and things. And then I sent it to a girl also born on 11/11 like Mara, and her name's Alana Luna, and she lives in Arizona, and she said, we have to make this video. So on zero budget, I recorded the audio track, wrote it. She did all the video and audio production. We made this video that now has been seen, 1.5 million times, and we didn't know if 100 people would be interested in it. And it started with a little prompt, like a little tap on my shoulder. You can change that. Draw a triangle. I had a whiteboard in my conference room, and it just said, draw a triangle. Now, geometry, I failed geometry in high school, and that's as far as I got. I went about a year in junior college and never took any math classes there. So math and me did not go in the same sentence. So the idea of hearing draw a triangle was like, wow, why am I getting this? So I did, and then you can go back though. Go back. Then don't go back. You'll mess it up. So it was draw a triangle, and I did. I drew a triangle, and I said, okay, well, for whatever reason, I drew a triangle. I said, no, write down the sum total of its angles. And I'm like, holy crap, I don't think I know what sum totals of its angles mean. But a triangle always will total, its three angles will always total 180. So just remember that. It's a very simple fact. All of these shapes that you see, all of the primary geometric shapes, if it has 4 sides, it will always total 360. If it has 5 sides, it will always total 540. 6 sides, always 720. 7 sides, always 900. And 8 sides, always 1080. It doesn't matter if it's crooked or equilateral. But one thing you might notice right away is all of them total 9. I thought that was interesting. But more interesting, and I don't know which one of these is, do you remember which one of these is the sonic geometry set? Okay. So after I drew the triangle and was guided to write down the sum total, the numeric value of its angles, I thought I was done. They said, one more thing, play that as a tone. I'm like, play that as a tone? How do I do that? And it's like, well, we probably have apps on our phone, tone generating apps. You all have it. You could just search tone generator and find the one I found, and I played 180 cycles per second that sounded very close to that. And I thought I was done. I was like, no, you got to keep going. So I did the square, and when I did the square, you'll see that it's twice the number of the triangle. You bend that and don't pull it. Okay. So when I did that, when I did the square, you'll see it's double. In music terms, that's called an octave. If you play this, and if you double it, it's this, and double it is. And I'm like, wow, a square and a circle are an octave above this. And then it was the pentagon. And I'm like, hey, I know that note. And as I applied a numeric value to all the geometric shapes, I got, that's a major chord in music. It's the most beautiful form of music ever written. When you hear a song, your ear is always guiding you back to where is the major chord. If it starts in a minor, you're being tugged to the major chord. If it plays in a seventh, your heart is pulling you towards the major chord because it sounds most right to us. So I thought it was incredible that geometry would play a major chord. And I'm like, this is fascinating to me. This must be known information. I'm going to go learn about this. And I left my whiteboard, went to this computer, I Google searched, YouTube searched, blog searched, webpage searched, everything I could. Geometry reveals harmonics, any version of that, not one thing. Not one thing that said geometric forms would reveal a major chord. Not only a major chord, but a numerically perfect major chord, which we'll talk about. So then I did the Platonic solids, and 4 out of the 5 Platonic solids on the right will reveal the same chord. And if we play the 6 circles of sonic geometry, or sacred geometry, starting with a circle at 360, and layer 720, layer 360 again to get 1080, layer 360 again, 1440, 360 again, 1800, 360 again, 2160, same chord. So it doesn't matter how you look at your geometry, from flat to Platonic solids to sacred geometry, it reveals this chord. And the closest that chord comes to is an F sharp. It's not perfect on the pianos we play today that are tuned to a certain hertz cycle, but it's close to if you played these black keys, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, if the tuning is 432. And some of you have heard a little bit about 432 tuning. Okay, next slide. So the next thing that came to me is, what are all the other notes leading from the octave to the octave, are they here as well? And they were. All I had to do, since everything totaled 9, is use factors of 9. 72 plus 9 is 81, 80 plus 90, and then double it. 144 plus 18 is 162, all the way up. And now numbers started coming to me, and my brain works in unique ways. I'm like a trivia master, but can't remember what I did yesterday. And I knew some of these numbers started jumping out at me. So here's the F sharps, 90, 180, 360, 720, 1440. Here's the A sharp, these, and here's the C sharp. These are the first 3 chords of geometry. But when I moved around, these are only some of the notes. There's 14 tones, but here's some of them. 72. 72 is a really significant number. 72 is listed in every single major religious teaching. Islam, 72 virgins. Judaism, 72 names of God. Christianity, 72 languages out of the Tower of Babel. Buddhism, 72 stupas in their largest Buddhist temple. Even though in the dome of our Capitol building, George Washington is ascending with 13 angels, but there's 72 stars around his head. Like, what is that? And 144. 144,000 is the number of people that are supposedly saved in the book of Revelations. 144,000 is the number of limestone casing stones that cover the Great Pyramid of Giza. 144,000 is the number of years in a Mayan, or days in a Mayan back-tune time cycle. 108. This number, 108. Somebody, the girl here was talking earlier, she mentioned her mala necklace. Mala necklaces have 108 beads. Mantras and mudras are repeated 108 times in Hindu ceremonies. Oh, there you go. And then 216, that's a number that we'll talk about. And then, see, these are just doubles of each other. The same note, but just higher up the scale. Like 108 would be this, and then 216 would be this, and then higher and higher and higher. And then 432. And I remembered that number in Pythagorean tuning. It didn't mean much more to me other than I'd heard of it as a base note of Pythagorean tuning. 864 will mean something we'll see. So all of a sudden there was all these white numbers are numbers that meant something someplace else. Just like Einstein said, coincidence. Follow the coincidences. There must be something worth noting here if there's that many coincidences, and right away there was a bunch. Next slide. So it became, I didn't know enough about geometry to know how do we measure angles. Every angle ever measured in geometry, doesn't matter if it's this angle or straight across or all the way around, is based on a circle being 360 degrees. That's when this information starts becoming a story and a bit of telegraphed information into the future rather than just, a circle's 360. How many people know that a circle's 360 degrees already? How many knew that? How many know why is a circle 360 degrees? Almost nobody. Usually nobody. I have people that come out the Integratron, engineers, architects, nobody knows. They're using this information every day. So when you see an angle, all they did was layer a circle over it and say, how much percentage of this circle does it take? Well, it became a function. A circle is 360 degrees because it is 6 pi wedges of 60 degrees. That's pretty easy. 6 pi wedges, right there, 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 60, 60, 60, 60, 60, 360 degrees. But again, why is that? Next slide. Now we're following coincidences here. 60 shows up again in time. How we measure our seconds and minutes and days and years end up being functions of 60. So we have 60 now governing our geometry. We have 60 governing the way we track time. Next slide. Our world, even though we have people that live in different units of measurement all over the world, meters, but if you're a pilot or a boat captain, the world goes back to nautical miles. As soon as you're in your plane, you're flying at nautical miles. As soon as you're in a boat, you're traveling in nautical miles. Meters, all that stuff goes away. Nautical miles are functions of 60. Every 1 degree of latitude or longitude is 60 nautical miles. Next slide. Buckminster Fuller became infatuated. He wrote 2 books that are thicker than Bibles about base 60 math. And he said 60-degree math, which he called synergetics, reveals nature's behaviors both physically and metaphysically. He obsessed over 60-degree math. In fact, to the point where he said, because society does not understand the significance of 60-degree geometry, we may conclude that society does not understand nature. That's how important 60 degrees was to Buckminster Fuller, the inventor of the geodesic dome, called one of the top 20 minds of the 20th century. This is a shape that Buckminster Fuller saw. It's called the vector equilibrium, and it is all based, it is not a Platonic solid. Platonic solid means that the same shape was used to build the outer perimeter of it. So either triangles or squares or pentagons. This is made up of triangles, there's 8 of them, and 6 squares. The external of it looks like triangles and squares. The beauty of this shape, unlike any other geometric solid, is it has a core, it has a 0 point that no other geometric solid has. From this point, every one of these lines that reaches out to these other 12 points is exactly the same length, exactly 60 degrees away from the others. So he called this the geometry of God, or the geometry of creation. It's the only one where you start here, and if you keep building out in all directions, it will look just like this. If this was an atom, the entire galaxy would look just like this. Expansion, 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 and it would all connect back to that center. Next. 60 degrees of arc in sacred geometry. How many people are here familiar with sacred geometry? Okay, so a lot of times people go, you know, it's a function of drawing circles. If you get clever enough, you get a protractor and a compass and you start drawing circles, you're going to make sacred geometry. It would take you 1,000,000 years if you had never seen sacred geometry to think of this pattern. But if you thought of 60 degrees of arc, 1/6 of a circle, right there, that's 60 degrees. A monkey would build sacred geometry in about 10 minutes because it will only do so much. If you make this little leaf, if you drew that arc and then said, I'll make it mirror itself, then it looks like a leaf, and maybe I'll see what it does. It kind of like starts making this wave pattern, or I'll draw all these and then I'll enclose it. But eventually, sacred geometry is not a function of a circle so much as it's a function of this shape right here, 60 degrees of arc meeting each other. Next slide. So where did this come from? Where did this 60-degree math system, why are all these 60s? Every 60 you know of is from a certain math system, and every 12 you know of, 12 eggs and donuts in a dozen, 12 months in a year, 12 mythical gods, 12 disciples around Jesus, 12 astrological ages. They all come from this counting system that is not our counting system based on tens. Indians still, from India, not here, India, people still teach this counting system to their children. And if you want to do it real quick, you could hold up your left hand and your thumb becomes a pointer and your right hand becomes a holder of 12. So you're counting either the knuckles or the pads between your knuckles on your other 4 fingers. So your thumb goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Once you get to that 12, you hold it and you count up to 12 again. 12 plus 12 is 24. Go again, 24 plus 12 is 36. Go again, 36 plus 12 is 48. And go one last time, 48 plus 12 is 60. This is the system that gives us all the 12s and all the 60s that we still use every single day. The entire world uses all this information more than really the math system that we use because this is algebra, this is calculus, this is physics. This is how we measure the planet. This is how we measure time. This is how we measure distance. All right. So where did that system come from? Where did 1260 math come from? That's the story. That's the hinge point of the beginning of this deep, deep, deep rabbit hole. Pre-6,000 years ago, there's a lot of stories. There's versions of humanity that existed pre-6,000 years ago, but something incredible happened when most of humanity was living a hunter-gatherer existence. And we don't know how to corroborate or verify much before this because there's no writing other than hieroglyphics to suggest anything. There's not a written language we can read. But something happens where humanity looked like this. They didn't farm, they didn't have agriculture, they didn't build complex housing, the clothes they wore were animal skins, it was very rudimentary tools, hunter-gatherer existence for most of the world's population up till about 6,000 years ago. And then, in one place, at one time, next slide, this happened. Humanity went from that hunter-gatherer, brutish existence to building the world's first pyramid called a ziggurat, the world's first sailboat, the world's first agricultural system, the 1260 math system we're talking about, the world's first written language, the world's first wheeled and axled vehicle, the world's first loom to weave fabric, the world's first beer, plumbing system, pottery wheel. All of that happened in one place in one time. I mean, think of that. This isn't the bettering of technology. This is the invention of technology that we are still using today. Doesn't matter if you're driving around a Tesla, it's still a wheeled and axled vehicle. How did this happen? How in one place, in one quick moment did this happen? Well, we can read their language, and it looks like this. This is cuneiform. Cuneiform was written on soft clay tablets about the size of a iPhone 8. And it was soft clay, and there was a stylus that looked like this, like a T. So all of these shapes that you see here were made from one stylus and just how you held it on what angle and how you pressed it. And we can read cuneiform. So we can read what these people say happened. How did you do all that you did in such a short period of time? Next slide. They said, we didn't. We were visited. This was gifted technology. This math system was gifted to us. This language was gifted to us. This writing system, all these technologies was gifted to us by these sky visitors we call the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki literally means those from heaven who came, kin of royalty who descended from the sky. However you decipher it, Anunnaki means sky visitor in one form or another. Now, archaeologists will look at this mural and say, this is nothing more than the celebration of agriculture of the day. They're all excited because we figured out how to grow crops in one place and irrigate them, and now they're harvesting the crops. You know, he's holding a piece of fruit. Don't get too excited about it. You people are wacky for buying into this Anunnaki story. Next slide. We'll revisit this. Then the question is then, if it wasn't some big system that was all put together, now it sounds like I'm standing up here just trying to shoehorn a bunch of information together. Like, oh, 60 seconds this, and latitude and longitude that, and geometry this. It's like you're trying to shoehorn a bunch of stuff to make it sound like it fits. That's not the case. Next slide. That's a logical argument. When we made the first sonic geometry video, the most logical argument that we got a few times is you're taking a bunch of arbitrary systems. A circle being 360 degrees is arbitrary. It could be 1,000 degrees. It could be 10 degrees. It could be whatever somebody said it needed to be. A mile could be whatever it said it needed to be. How we measure time, 60 seconds to a minute. That's all a bunch of arbitrary stuff, unless it isn't. And that's where this goes. So let's go. Oh, you can't go back. That's all right. Let's imagine that we're the sky visitors now. And we're getting close to being those sky visitors. 20 years ago, we didn't think that there was an extra solar planet outside of our solar system. We didn't think there was any planets. Now we think that there's planets around every single star potentially. in 20 years. NASA says it's not a matter of if, but when we find intelligent life in the cosmos. But let's say we're the visitors now, and we've seen a beautiful planet like ours. We know from a great distance away it has an ocean atmosphere, and it's holding air, and it looks like it could support life. So we go and look at it, and one of the things that we notice about Earth, it does three things. Our planet does three mechanical movements, not arbitrary things, but three. It rotates, and we call that a sol or a day. It takes that long, 24 hours. It orbits our star. That takes 365 days. But it does one thing that's the slowest mechanical thing on our planet. It wobbles. And it takes 25,920 years for this wobble to take place. That's the biggest clock that we have. And it's not arbitrary. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's 25,920 orbits around the sun. It's like gears. Next. Now here's a crazy thing that starts hinting at that this isn't arbitrary. If you take the Sumerian counting system of holding 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and you divide 25,920, a non-arbitrary number, all of a sudden 25,920 divided by 12 is a geometric measurement. That's a cube. It's only a cube if a circle is 360 degrees, and it's 360 degrees because the Sumerians gave us the 60. 25,920 by the next number, 1080, an octagon. 25,920 divide the third finger, 720, a hexagon. 25,920 by 48, the fourth finger, a pentagon. And 25,920 divided by 60, here's this crazy number again, 432. This is a holy crap moment, whether you know it or not. That all of this information keying off of a non-arbitrary measurement would lead us to geometric numbers is impossible. It shouldn't even be remotely possible, and yet the numbers that we held up on our right hand reveals all those numbers. Next slide. And then where'd the second come from? Sumeria. That came around the same time. They gave us the formula, or let's say the sky visitors gave the Sumerians the formula how to divide a day. 12 hours, 12, remember, we have all of our 12s, times 60 minutes, times 60 seconds. Hey, look how many seconds are in half of a day. 43200. 12 hours of night, times 60, 43,200. The total seconds in a day, 86,400. If you remember that was also in our Factor 9 grid, 864 is an octave above 432. The diameter of the sun, in miles, a Sumerian measurement, 864. Next slide. 432 is an enigma. It's not always geometric. The actual speed of light, if we're in miles, Sumerian, per seconds, Sumerian, 432 is 186,282. If we square 432, multiply it times itself, it's almost the exact number. It's off by 0.0001%. It's closer than the pistons are in your car engine. 186,624 miles per second. Accuracy rate is off the charts. If you square 433, you're miles off. If you square 431, you're miles off. 432, you're almost exactly the speed of light in Sumerian measurements. So 432, double it, 864, half it, incredibly, the moon in miles is 216 with 10 behind it. Next slide. And where'd the second? Oh, we did that. You went backwards somehow. Uh-oh, now they're gonna keep going backwards, I think. Oh, so is there a message? So we got a bunch of information, we got a bunch of numbers, we got a bunch of stuff that fits together. Is there something significant in all this? Because application becomes the most important thing. You become aware of a bunch of information. If you're not applying it somehow, then for what? That was my question anyway. Next slide. There is a message. Harmony. Just like when geometry revealed this, harmony started coming through in all my research. Harmony can mean a musical term, meaning notes get along well with each other, but harmony can mean lots of things, that a system is operating in cooperation with itself. We can live in harmony with the entire ecosystem, or we can live in discord but harmony is a very big word. I went and saw Michio Kaku, the white-haired Japanese physicist, and as he gave his lecture, everything was in musical terms. He said physics was the study of harmony. So we've all been made aware of this in some way. I mean, whether you're into math or into music or not, you've probably heard some version of this. Math is music. Used to be, thousands of years ago, when Pythagoras, the father of music and math was music. He would take a string, it had a mathematical length, he would cut it in half, that would be octaves, the numbers would match, everything was relative to itself. But it isn't true anymore. Math is not music anymore. Here's perfect harmonics. Here's our tone that was geometric. Here's another chord that's in the factor 9 grid. It's not this one, but it is another numerically perfect major chord. And then there's another one with 432 at its base. The important thing about this is that these are exactly the same distance away from each other and always will be, no matter how high up the scale we go. If we go into dolphin range, tens of thousands of hertz, we hear comfortably in the mid 500s, 1,000, 1,500. That's right in the middle of a piano. That sounds best to us. Dolphins hear in the tens of thousands up to 80,000 hertz, 80,000 vibration cycles per a second, ultrasound. So if we start wrong, if we start correctly like this, numerically perfect, and keep expanding, going up the scale, it will stay perfect. Okay, go to the next slide. But if we start wrong, this is the chord you would hear today if we went and sat at that piano right there. Everything has been fudged a bit to sound okay. And that's because pianos and our modern day instruments are complicated, way more complicated than what Pythagoras was working with. So we started fudging instruments, and no longer do we have these beautiful whole numbers, 288, 360, 432. We have 293.6 and 370.5 and 440. If you play those chords in that chord in side waves, it vibrates, it pulses, and it annoys you. So like every music that you've ever heard in your whole life potentially is annoying you. All right, next slide. So move it up to there and see if we can push. Here's a movie reference. Do you see the little play button? So this is obviously from Close Encounters. I love this movie because they were dropping us into the idea of how much sense does it make to play tones to an extraterrestrial intelligence? Can we communicate information that we understand on both levels by playing tones? Well, the way it happened in the movie, they hired John Williams, and Steven Spielberg said, listen, I want 5 tones, and they played like 100 different tone sets and just said, yeah, that's good enough. That sounds good. Go to the next slide. Let's take something that is universally true. From the smallest thing you can imagine, a small snail shell, to a galaxy, it's known as the Fibonacci sequence. And it's very easy, actually. It starts at 0 point, moves forward by 1, and then you just add the previous 2 numbers to get to the next. So 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, 3 plus 5 is 8. This is true all over the universe. This does not change, just like the phi ratio or the pi ratio, the radius of a circle divided by its circumference. None of that stuff changes. So what if we applied tones to the Fibonacci sequence, or at least the first 6 steps, from the moment it spurted out of a seed and started growing into a tree, or us started growing? We're Fibonacci machines. We have Fibonacci all over us. Our hands are a Fibonacci cycle. Our ears are a Fibonacci cycle. Our pineal gland is a Fibonacci cycle. So what would it sound like if we played tones to represent the Fibonacci cycle? Let's just say we applied and just picked a number, but let's say we pick 432 or 216 and then build up from there. So next slide, and you'll have to play it. This is a mathematically perfect representation. Major chord, the same major chord. So all of a sudden, Close Encounters starts seeming pretty realistic, that we could communicate, we could receive information galactically, and we could send information galactically. We understand how to, another way to represent the Fibonacci cycle, we can do it with frequencies. Next slide. Let's go back to Sumerian. Man, we got a lot to cover in 15 minutes. Let's go back to Sumerian. Here's one of the oldest texts ever written. It's called the Sumerian Kings List. It's a brick. These are all four sides of the same document. And it just happens to the first, it's describing these kings that ruled in the area of Mesopotamia pre a worldwide flood. And here's how long the first three kings lived. Next slide. The first king ruled for 28,800 years. The second king ruled for 36,000 years. The third king ruled for 43,200 years. If you take those numbers without the zeros on them and played them, it's numerically perfect harmonics again. So one of the oldest documents ever written has the numbers to play as frequencies. And they even gave us the second of what we should play those frequencies, measure them by. So all of a sudden, these frequencies start seeming really, really important. All right, next slide. But again, so what? What is the application? We get so far down this information stream and we see how it's connecting to so many things. What is the payoff? What does it do for us that we didn't already know or could do? Let's go back to Samaria and look at this document. This was in a city called Nimrud. This was a big mural that was destroyed by ISIS, unfortunately. The city was Nimrud. The mural had been transported to a museum long before that. But let's take a look at this mural again and look at the archaeological, description of why it is what it is. So here's the plant, and here's the farmers, and here's their seed baskets, and here's the fruit they're picking. It all makes sense until you look closer at the plant and see that it has a crank on the side of it like a jack-in-the-box. And if you look closely at this, that he's holding to the back of this head, let's zoom in on that. Next slide. He's not holding a piece of fruit. He's not holding a pine cone. He's holding the pineal gland in your brain. It's big, but it's big for a reason, and it was pointed to the back of that head. If you start looking really closely, you see all kinds of look like wristwatches and everything else. So is there if this looks, and you have one of these, every mammal has a pineal gland. In mammals that are not us, they're very pure looking. In us, they can be very gunked up looking. They can be gunked up with calcium deposits. But maybe they're talking, what if they're talking about the pineal gland in all of these things? Next slide. And that pineal gland looks like a pine cone. This is the Vatican. This is the dead center of the Vatican. They are not worshiping a pine cone. They are saying the pineal gland means something to the human experience and our connection out. Next slide. We see the pineal gland and we start seeing this form called a caduceus, two snakes moving up a staff. Often we'll be meeting to ignite a pine cone. So when we talk about a kundalini activation, the Ida and Pingala snakes climbing up a staff is your spine, but for what reason? To activate your pine cone, your own personal pineal gland. Here, the very first caduceus, two snakes going up a straight staff, 6,000 years ago in Samaria. This was a cup. This is the very first caduceus ever represented in art that we've found yet. This is why it's curved like this. It was taken off of a small drinking cup. But here's the two snakes moving up a staff. And we see this all the time now, whether it's the chakra system activating, if it activates the brain or whatever it's here, it's like it gives us wings, like Red Bull. And we see geometry, we move all this. Next slide. And what happens? So what happens then if our pineal gland is not only activated, but there might be something else going on. A lot of people have heard pineal activation. I hear it to death now, and it doesn't mean that much to me anymore. My pineal gland is activated. But part of it, if it is activated, people like Alex Gray, who painted this picture, say, or people that take plant medicine journeys, they see beyond. They see into the matrix. Anybody here have an experience where you've seen into the grid or seen deeper and see something that starts looking a little trippier, but it has a grid essence to it? Next slide. Another pineal activation here, and here's the grid. This actually happens to be the pineal pattern emanating from here, but it's all referencing activate the pineal gland. My work guided me to, it's not just activation, but it's calibration. And that these frequencies, that's really what they're doing. That they're calibrating the spin, and you need spin. In geometry, Nassim Haramein just got back from Egypt, and all new geometry is moving away from straight line and into curved geometry. Geometry that spins and arcs and vortexes. That's where geometry is going, is into motion. So here we see the activation of the eye that happens to look like that shape that we saw in sacred geometry. And we see something else. If you looked in the back picture, the girl there, she had 2 lotus flowers on either side of her head. This is a common representation of third eye awareness, pineal gland activation. And we see the lotus again. What's the deal with the lotus? Next slide. There's the lotus activation. You'll see it all over the place. I mean, it's a very new agey thing to symbolize spiritual awakening and awareness and ascension. Is somehow the lotus is part of that imagery. Next slide. So here's cymatics. Cymatics is when you take tone, you apply it to a medium, and it could be sand on a flat plate, or it could be water in a small dish, and then it creates a standing wave pattern by vibrations bouncing off of each other, and that pattern holds and creates a really cool stationary pattern. So this is just an example of what cymatics can do. But watch what happens when we play 288, 360, 432 through cymatics. Oh, did it not go? Now you have to go, or maybe go one next and see if it's there. It's not, so can you, I don't know how to go back. Backwards arrow, somebody want to help her out? Okay, so do you see it there? So this is, oops. So go back and try and move it. Okay, so go forward and then see, nope, let me try it. This is important. I worked with a guy in a cymatics lab who had never seen this ever in 10 years. That sound waves made a lotus, an animated lotus. That was a holy crap moment for him. That a holy trinity of tones would create an image that we've seen that signifies awakening and ascension and related to your pineal activation. These tones did that. This is Alex Gray's artwork, other things. I did a little workshop today. We talked about this shape. People that go on these medicine trips see the Fibonacci pattern. They see into the grid. They see the birth of spin, more or less. This shape can't hold still. This shape is like a snapshot of spin taking place. Next slide. And Confucius said, "Let the states of equilibrium and harmony exist in perfection, and a happy order will prevail throughout heaven and earth, and all things will be nourished and flourish." In my workshop, I talked about equilibrium. Buckminster Fuller's shape was called vector equilibrium. The things were in balance. And then Confucius says harmony. If equilibrium and harmony are communicating with each other, everything is working right. It's like the entire universe, including us, is working as it should. So that's more or less the end of this, and we finished it in 5 minutes. I'm going to go a little step further into a little shameless plug. This is a symbol that I created. I call it convergence. And it takes what I call feminine geometry, which is always curved, and then that's a circle. And then masculine geometry is straight. And here's a triangle. This is not an equilateral triangle. This is a triangle that has 72 degrees up here, and each one of these are 54. Go to the next slide. So all of a sudden, we know a circle is 360. This peak is 72. This is 54 and 54. So now, 54 and 54 together is 108, the number of beads in a mala necklace, or mantras and mudras. 360 plus 72 is 432. These are both 144. 144 plus 144 is 288. So what I call this convergence because to me it was the divine feminine merging with the divine masculine, creating not only peace but perfect harmony. So next slide. I don't have back of room sales, but I have my front pocket sales. I have 20 of these that I made myself 3 days ago. I had 25, but I sold 5 out of the 6 people that were in my other thing. So if you're interested, they're $44 a piece, which is high, but it's because I made them myself, and it cost me almost that much. If you'd be interested in one of those on a chain, I have those with me. And then the next slide is just me actually pouring it into the foundry. This is an artist who shows here at the Sawdust Festival. He's called Dr. Neon. He's an amazing artist, inventor, and he let me build these things in his shop because he didn't have time to do it, and he just taught me how to do it very quickly, and we made these. So that's the end of my presentation. We're actually done by 8 o'clock, so thank you. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Holy shit. That was awesome. Thank you, Eric. That was really awesome. Can you guys hear me? Hey, Eric, did you also notice, and I don't know if anybody else noticed, but with all of the like Kundalini and all of the snakes going up, it's also the same shape as the DNA coming through. So it's like all connected. That's amazing. Let's give him another round of applause. So great. Is that your first presentation of that? No? Okay. Well, yes, it all connected. Everything connected. Yeah.
I forgot. So these chime sets, Michelle sells these chime sets. She has the King's Chord here. I think she has 3 left. She's been selling them throughout the day yesterday and today. And she can order you the sonic geometry set, but she has the actual 288, 364, 32 that seems to activate that pineal gland. I think she has 3 sets left, and they're $144 just by coincidence.
Thank you. That was so awesome. My mind's still blown. My pineal gland is wide open. How's everybody doing? Good? Instead of equals MC square, we have mind equals blown everywhere. All right, so our next and final speaker for this evening is Big Fi. How many of you are familiar with him? Awesome. So we are grateful that he was able to make it. Everything happens as it should. So what a wonderful way to wrap up this conference. He is a cultural activist, a teacher, spiritual counselor, traditional healer, public speaker, writer, and spoken word and rap artist. Shut up, everyone! In a really loving way. You can say, please be quiet, everyone, but yell it really loud. I'm just kidding. Thank you. Those chimes really work. So we'll go ahead and bring him up to the stage. I did want to let everyone know that Nicole Duran's workshop will be taking place down at the bottom of the stairs. So if you purchase tickets for that, you can go ahead and head on down. She's heading on down there as well. And let's give a big round of applause for Big Fi.
Good evening. How's everyone? Can you hear me okay? Okay. So before I begin, I would like to acknowledge a special young guy in here today. Elliot. Where's Elliot? Elliot turned 11 years old today on 11/11. And Elliot? What's Elliot? Gabriel. Gabriel, not Elliot. I'm so sorry. Is Gabriel here? Oh, there he is. So can we all sing happy birthday to Gabriel for his 11th birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Gabriel, happy Earth Day to you. All right, Gabe. Happy Earth Day. And he turned 11 years old on 11/11. And here's his cake. Oh, Natalie. Happy Earth Day to Natalie. There she is. And Gabriel.
Gabriel, I want to say thank you so much that you come to our family. You are so special. You born 11/11. He's the star child. And I just want to say that they really learn us how to be open, with open heart. How was from the beginning in our land, in our ancestors. So we got the open heart really. And it's really hard to be walking right now with open heart. But this is the most important thing. That every master's ancestors walking with open heart. And that's what we're learning. That's what we want to remember. That's what we're trying to remember, to walking with open hearts. And they teach us this. So it's very important to listen to them, enjoy the time with them. Thank you, Gabriel, and every child in our world. Thank you. Washta.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you guys for being 11/11.
All right.
Thank you, Maura.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Well, it's good to see everyone this evening. I'm so honored to be here with you. And before I get started, I'd like to just kind of set the vibration. And I would like to ask for all of your participation as well. So I'm going to ask that you repeat this one word, and this word is men. Men. M-I-N. Okay, now, so I'm going to need 3 different groups. The first group, you're going to say the word men in a lower register like this. Min. Hold the N. Min. Okay, so can I have one group to do it in that register? Good. Now the second group, you're going to go up a little bit. Min. So can I have a second group? Min. Perfect. Now we're going to do it one more register. Higher register for the same sound. Min. Can I have someone for that third group? Min. Okay, so remember the group you're in, okay? Now we're going to do it all at the same time. The lower register, the mid, and the high. And prolong the N as long as you can. And I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes while doing this. Okay? And as you do that, I'm going to say a prayer to open the energies for this. Min. Good. Keep going. Hawun Netri Iachek Utit Mesu Joseph. Ready to ibi inti bagai neteri el neteru neterkui iwi hakui imbik neteri abkui neterkui iah kui uzer kui ba kui unfe neterma in neteru em neter gertet ilfe neter hatfe tem tu neteri ubai imper sebut neteri fe baimi neteru neter neteri haber Joseph patu. Okay, thank you. You can open your eyes. Thank you for that participation. As I was driving down from Los Angeles, I had some challenges. I was going to get here a lot earlier today, but I also observed that whenever there's some real important things that are going on, it's never easy or convenient to get to. Well, that's been my experience anyway. So I'm glad that I'm here now. And as I was coming down, I was thinking, what is on my heart to share? Should I talk about things that are practical? Should I share things or talk about things that are tangible? Or should I use this time that I've been blessed with to stand in front of you to talk about things that are romanticized based on our exposure to this world. And as I got closer to Laguna, I still didn't know what I was going to talk about. In most cases, I don't. I try to stay open enough and allow the energies to utilize this flesh so that I can leave something with you that you can take home, that you will find tangible, that you will find that you can apply. We are all in this realm of transformation. And the Dogon of West Africa um, are the people that I was exposed to back in 1998. So just to give you a little insight, there's many faces here that I've seen and that I've known, some longer than others, from different events. And people who have heard of me, they hear my name associated with the Dogon. Well, that's not because I was born a Dogon. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. Anybody from Chicago? So my experience has been really interesting because up until 1998, I knew nothing of the Dogon. Up to 1998, I knew nothing of many indigenous cultures outside of the borders of the United States. And it was due to this that I became more intrigued to learn more. And just at that moment when I was consulting with a good friend of mine, he asked me if I would like to go to a lecture in Chicago to hear a Dogon priest speak. I'm like, wow, yeah, I would. I would like to go and hear this gentleman because I've heard a lot about the Dogon people. And the thing that I heard most about them was the knowledge they had of the cosmos and the celestial world. Now, that really wasn't enough to inspire me, to be honest, based on where I was at that time. But out of intrigue, I decided to go and to hear what this Dogon priest, who was brought in from West Africa to speak, to hear what he had to say. And I went. After listening to him speak for about 2 hours, room full, more people than are here tonight. Everything he said went over my head. I didn't understand, I didn't get it, but I just thought it was courteous to approach him, say thank you for coming all this way. Um, I can appreciate that. I didn't understand everything, but thank you for coming. And he said, thank you, no problem. And I left. Next day, and that invited me, he said, hey, Big Bye. Well, at that time, my name was not Big Bye. At that time, my name was Courtney. Do I look like Courtney to you guys? Well, my name was Courtney at the time. He said, hey, Courtney, come on to the house, man. Bring your son. At the time, my son was 4 years old. Bring your son and, we having some food on the beach. He lived on the lakefront in Chicago. And so I went. And my son out on the beach, and we're in the water playing around, and a couple of hours go by, and I said, okay, son, let's go inside and get dressed, and we're going to leave. And at that moment, when I went inside with my son, who did I see sitting on my friend's couch? It was this Dogon priest who I just saw the day before, the same person that every word he said, it went over my head. He was there. And I asked my friend at the time, I said, hey, man, why didn't you tell me that this guy was coming over here? He said, well, I did not know. He was brought over there unannounced by an elder. But I remember my first words to this priest was, I don't know who you are, but I feel like there's a lot that I can learn from you. Although I knew nothing of the Dogon. Well, that day in 1998, it started a journey for me, a very unique journey, because where I'm from in Chicago, there's not many people that have had the opportunity or the ability to expand and expand outside of the communities, those urban jungles that I grew up in and that many people are living in now. So, given that opportunity, I accepted, and I mentioned to my teacher, who became to be my master, his name is Master Naba. I said, hey, maybe you should move to Chicago. And I said it jokingly, maybe you should move to Chicago because people need to hear what you have to say. And unexpected to me, he turned to me and said, okay, if you find me a place to stay, I'll move. Just like that, huh? Just like that, okay. And a week later, I found him an apartment in Chicago. And he moved to Chicago, and I became his eyes and ears to the Western world. He was the first to be sent by his elders to share the initiatic knowledge. And I was blessed enough to be his apprentice for 10 years from that day until he took his last breath in 2008 in Togo, West Africa. But a lot happened in those 10 years. A lot happened in those 10 years. And in keeping within the theme of what this conference represents, the 1111, the Star Knowledge Conference, there's so much wisdom that's in this room that's being carried by so many people that's representing so many different philosophies, trains of thought, cultures, systems, and they're all good. Let me say that as a disclaimer up front. They're all good. The Pharaoh Ramses II had 129 children. 129 children. And one day he asked all of them, which one of you look the most like me? And in unison, they all said, me, 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 everybody at the same time. And Ramses said, yeah, you're right. All of you look just like me. And his assistants said, Pharaoh, why would you say that? Why would you say that all of your 129 children look like you when they clearly don't? He said, because there's peace and there's no disputing among them. So as I look at all of the different cultures and the gatherings that we're having, we're all children of the same energy. And I think it's that lack of understanding that's causing the disharmony. Eric, the gentleman who was up here before me, he touched on some very important things that is a good segue into what I had in mind to discuss this evening. Being that this is a Star Knowledge Conference, and there's a lot of knowledge that's being shared, not only knowledge of what's happening down here on the planet we're standing on, but there's things that are being shared about the cosmic dimensions and our relationship to these cosmic dimensions. Well, there's a relationship that we have to this planet, regardless of where we're from. There's an old saying, it's not where you're from, it's where you are. It's not where you're from, it's where you are now. Eric mentioned these signals that goes out amongst these celestial bodies. This is something that we have names for. We have names for this dialogue of energies that takes place between all of the celestial bodies within the existence itself. Now, what our goal is as human beings is to identify those energies that are directly linked to this planet so we can see how we can become conduits for this energy to make these connections and signals and dialogue with all of the other celestial bodies. I'll give you an example. If we removed all of the chairs out of this room and turned the lights out and covered the windows to where it's pitch black, and if I said, okay, when I snap my finger, everyone run around the room as fast as you can. Well, it probably wouldn't take long before you start hearing people yelling from getting hit or hurt. Okay, now take the same scenario, but this time I say when you run around the room, scream. Scream while you run. Well, the chances are that will lessen the amount of injuries. Hey, you'll even be able to tell if the person that is next to you is a male or female. Hey, you'll even be able to tell if the person is younger person or older person too, right? Just by listening. Look at the cosmos in the same light, the same principles. If there was not a dialogue or a communication between the earth, the moon, the sun, all of the other planets, I don't think we will have what we consider now the harmony. It's what's stopping planets from colliding. It's what's stopping the earth from being pulled too far into the sun. And there's millions and millions of other scenarios that I can use to explain the importance of this dialogue of energies. Now, in a little bit, I want to go into what is our responsibility to those energies, being that we are human beings here on earth now. We have in the what we call in the center of the earth center, a pool of energies. Now, there's different names. If you go to Africa and if you travel around and visit different priests or shamans who honor different systems, they all have similar principles, but the names are sometimes different. Even among cultures around the world, did you know that many of the deities are the same deities, just with different names? Okay. This principle in the center of the earth is a core energy. A core energy. They call this energy the Bayuali. Now, when I say they call this energy, I'm speaking of the initiatic transference of that knowledge through the Dogon lineage. And I think it should be also noted that the Dogon, as we know, are not, it's not that cut and dry. The Dogon is not just a tribe of people who live in the cliffs of Mali in West Africa. The Dogon is a bloodline that's made up of several, it's like an umbrella, and under that umbrella, there's different bloodlines. And they're the direct descendants of those of the Nile and Niger Valley civilizations. What does that mean? Well, they are the descendants of those who inhabited what is now Egypt, or people call ancient Egypt. But if you look on the hieroglyphs, on the walls, you would not find the word Egypt anywhere. You would not find it anywhere. So before it was Egypt, this place, Iture, Mizra. It had many names, but the Dogon were inhabited that area of the Nile and Niger valleys. They were considered the upper echelon of the Kemetic societies. How many of you ever heard that term, Kemetic? Okay. Now that is the word that you will find written all over the pyramids and the temples. It's the word Kemet. You will find that word. But it's not to denote a territory, not a physical territory, because it stretched beyond the boundaries of what we call now Africa. Kemet is a spiritual territory, meaning there were people all over the world that adhere to these same values. All over the world, Europe, Asia, India, all of that was part of the Kemetic territories. Now, this energy pool that I'm speaking of, the Bayou Ali, every celestial body has one of these. Everyone. It's the energy that goes from the earth out to the cosmos. That's all it does. It's one way. That's all it does. And every celestial body has one, and that's all it does as well. So imagine, if you would, all of the planets in our small solar system, and each one of them within its core has an energy that is being emitted. But there's another channel, and all it does is receives energy. They call that the Yenu. That's all it does, is receives the energy. So now you have energy going like this. And that's the dialogue that I spoke about. Without this dialogue, harmony can never be achieved. It can never be achieved without that dialogue. If it's cut for any reason, it makes it very difficult for the planet itself. Now, we have different names for the planet. We know it in the Kemetic systems, the mystery school systems, as Ta, Geb, Keb, and there's other names. Same celestial body. The same celestial body. But if that dialogue is cut for any reason, it makes it difficult for the earth itself to let everything else out there knows, here's my identity. It's like a signature. And we all have a signature. Well, the earth has a signature as well. And this signature is known through this dialogue of energies. Now, what does that have to do with us as human beings on this planet? Well, it has everything to do with us because we are probably the most difficult things or entities at play that makes it difficult for the earth itself to maintain this dialogue because we're mobile. We're not still. Hey, if we were just all rocks or trees or vegetables or plants, we'd be a lot more stable for the planet. But the fact that we're mobile, everywhere we go, we're taking our energy with us. It's moving all the way, all the time. It's not just horizontal. It's not just vertical. And it's shifting, it's moving all the time. And it makes it difficult for the planet itself. This is why we laugh in the culture when people use the expression, man, that guy is dumb as a rock. You heard that expression? That guy is dumb as a rock. Well, actually, rocks are one of the most intelligent entities in the existence. It's simplified to the point where what is more simple? A rock poses no threat to the transference of this energy. A tree poses no threat. The vegetables poses no threat. Human beings, we pose the greatest threat. So I would like to just try to start and invite you into another understanding as far as our relationship to this dialogue of energies. We can see how all of the other planets, we talk about how they affect us here on Earth based on what time of the year you were born, right? So if you're born in January, that's according to the zodiac, you're what, Capricorn? Aquarius, Capricorn, okay. So each month it carries with it a different type of energy that we are affected by if we're born within a certain time frame. Is that correct? Okay. But all of these energies we're looking at are Venus, they're Jupiter, they're Saturn, they're Uranus. But why is Earth not a part of the zodiacs? And that's the planet that we're closest to. That's the planet that we're standing on. Why is the Earth not talked about in the zodiacs? There's reasons for everything. But why is that? Shouldn't it be included in the conversation? How does the Earth energies affect a human being? But we spend a lot of time studying the cosmos. Investigation is always a great thing. But it would behoove every human being to try to understand the relationship with the planet that we're standing on right now. Because wherever we're from, there's obligations that we have to this planet, to Earth, to Ta. And the greatest thing that we can do for the planet itself is to maintain our purity at the highest level. That's what every human being can do to raise the vibration of the planet itself, is to maintain purity. This purity that I'm speaking of is of thought, of action, of words. This concept is taught very heavily within the mystery schools of Memphis, Thebes, and Abydos. These concepts of purity and how important it is. You know, in Paris, France was one of the biggest cult followings for the goddess Isis. She had one of the largest followings in the planet, in the world, located what is now Paris, France. Actually, Paris comes from a Medu term, and when I say Medu, I'm speaking of the Medu Neter, which is the name for the hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs is a Greek term. It is called the Medu Neter. And in that language, Per means house. Is for Isis. Paris, the house of Isis. And it's always been that way. But the priests of her temples were known for their purity. They were renowned for their purity, to the point where they were all bald. All of the priests of Isis were bald. And I use Isis, but I also would like to share what her other names are before she was given the name Isis. It's Aishat, Asata, Aset. And I use them interchangeably. But wow, I just got lost in my own thoughts right there. The priests of Isis, they would singe all of their hair off their arms, their head. They didn't even have eyebrows. No under hair, no underarm hair. And they sand shit off. So when you go to the Caribbean, how many of you been to the Caribbean? You've been to the parties and they had a fire and they doing the dances and putting the fire on their bodies, where everything has a history, right? Everything has a history. Everything. And the reason why the priests of her temples, Isis, Ishot temples, were so adamant about their purity is because they had the concept that anything that the body eliminates is considered corruption. Meaning, even if one hair fall off your head, it's considered corruption of the body. So they would do a process of what we call ablutions or purification. And we were taught these in the initiation camps. And we do these when we first wake up, and it's the last thing we do before we go to bed. But the purifications is purifying the mind, the body, and the spirit. And this is important energetically. Now, there's many systems that have many ways of doing these things. Just like Ramses had 129 children, and they all think that they look like him because he said so. But they all are his children. So of all of the systems that are out here, there are many systems that teach purification with the elements, fire, air, water, and earth. But it's our obligation as human beings, with our identity linked to this planet, to serve this planet while we're here. How are we serving the planet? How are we serving the planet? How are we serving ourselves? How are we honoring who we are as human beings? How are we honoring that? If you were a stranger and came to Earth to visit for one day, and you saw and you were able to get all of the news of what's going on downloaded within like 10 minutes, is this a place that you would think is ideal for evolving? You can answer, it's okay. Well, it's difficult to be a judge, and none of us are here to judge, but I think it would be safe to say that we're not living up to our fullest potential as a species when we build things that can destroy us as a species. There's a mechanism that the earth itself triggers when that energy line is cut or when it's an obstacle for this communication to happen. The earth itself triggers a mechanism within us. And you know what this mechanism tells us? Destroy, 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 destroy. There's another mechanism that says preserve, 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 preserve. Every moment, every day. Nothing is constant. This is why someone will say, well, I don't want to live anymore. And they cut their wrists, but then they'll call the ambulance. Because from 1 minute, your channels were closed. The next minute, your channels open back up. When they open, you're happy. You want to live. You're excited. You have energy and you feel good for no reason at all. You don't even know why. You just wake up feeling great. Your channels are open. Take advantage of that. But your channels also close. And it's like this. It's like a heartbeat. It's like a heartbeat. And it's constantly going like this. But the more pure purity that we can maintain, the cleaner of a conduit we can become for the earth itself to maintain its communication. Because even if the earth have to get rid of all of us to survive, it will, without question. Earth, nature don't deal with emotions. Like, it's not an emotional thing. But to ensure its own survival, it will get rid of all of us on the planet to ensure its own survival. So there's a huge obligation that we have as human beings in the now. And that obligation is to understand what this relationship is. What is this purity? Once I was exposed to this concept of spiritual purity, I was told if anyone touches you and if they're not pure, it spoils your purity. Which posed a dilemma for me because in Chicago, I rode the trains a lot. And I would do my purification before I would leave home to go to the temple and rush hour in Chicago and stand on the train. As soon as someone touches you, it's spoiled. Even when you sneeze, it's spoiled. If you pass gas, it's spoiled. That's how fragile purity is. It's the most fragile thing, but it's also the thing that deserves our consideration the most. So I only have about 4 minutes left, and there's 5 worlds full of information and knowledge that we have yet to even fathom. And it definitely isn't enough time in one day to cover all of that. But I did want to just impress upon you within this time that I had and been honored and given to share with you the importance of purity in our thoughts because it carries energy. Our thoughts carries just as much energy as if I did something physically. Our thoughts carry that energy as well. And if we are to continue to evolve as a species and not degenerate, because those are the only 2 options nature leaves us, is either we evolve or we degenerate. That's it. There's no gray area. And if we are to evolve, let's practice the spiritual and the intellectual honesty that's necessary for the true evolution of our species. The dogmas and the ideologies and things like that, it can only take us so far. I would be remiss if I didn't make mention. 2 years ago, I met Chief Golden Light Eagle at Serpent Mound in Ohio, and I was leaving the day that I was leaving, and I'd been looking for him like for the first 2 days while I was there, but he was always, people talking to him, and he's playing his guitar, and I don't like to disturb him when he plays guitar. And I had a chance to see him right before I left and got on the road to come back to LA. And he said some things to me within 15 minutes of visiting him right before I left. And I don't know if you remember everything you said, Chief, but it all came true. So I know you guys don't know what that means, but maybe Chief would understand. And that was my introduction. And he gave me the works that the incredible works that he did with the time, the calendars. And as I started going through them on my flight back, I noticed, wow, these symbols are the symbols that we were learned and were taught in the initiation camps. And that then opened up another door or another gate for me to walk through and investigate further. So I wanted to say thank you, Chief, for your words. They were really awesome and really helped me a lot in that moment. And I'm forever grateful for that. So thank you. I want to acknowledge that. And for all of you, I'd like to thank you for sitting so quietly and patiently and listening to me. And I don't know if usually when I go to different places and speak, one of the main things that people want to know about is Sirius, and they want to know everything about Sirius and the cosmos, you know, the things that the Dogon are known for. Well, I tend to disappoint people a lot because I think we have enough distractions, and based on what I'm seeing in the world, I think our attention and focus should be more here than what's up there during this time anyway. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening so quiet and patiently. I love all of you. Thank you for coming out. Have a safe trip back home.
All right, come on, you guys should know this by now. Another round of applause. Thank you so much. We're so happy you made it. And as that was our last speaker, I know it's always a sad evening when it ends. So I wanted to say thank you to all of you for being here and everybody co-creating, because this wouldn't happen without you. And thank you, Chief Golden Light Eagle, for listening to Spirit and taking action and moving forward with all of this and keeping it going for so long. I know we all appreciate it. Thank you, Chief. And thank you to all of the volunteers that helped with ticketing, everything like that. Jen Berryhill again, thank you so much for coordinating, organizing this, along with Michelle Anderson. Thank you, thank you. Super beautiful and amazing. So we there is some cake over there. So we do have to break everything down and take all the chairs and put everything away and sweep up. So we won't be hanging out like we normally do, but we were going to ask the Chicago girls if they could serenade and sing while we all clean up, if that would be possible. And you're more than welcome to, you know, kind of talk and hang out, but let's please respect that we've had a long day and that we have a lot of work still to do. So if anybody would like to help us put the chairs away, there's an awesome dolly system that they have back here. It would really help, but we have to sweep everything and do all of this fun stuff. And then we also have, for those of you that were able to get tickets for the Dolphin Tour tomorrow, we'll be seeing all of you tomorrow. And to remember that since we are in this time of the law of innocence, truth, and family, and the grandmother spider, that even though there may be a lot of questions that we still have at the end of these conferences, it's always like we want it to keep going and going, but to please respect the nature of letting go of having those attachments and just sitting in, letting everything sink in that you've learned over the last 2 days, and let it be, because a lot of answers are still going to come through and it's going to keep resonating more and more. And so if you have questions for any of the speakers and they're getting ready to go or anything like that, just please respect their time and space, and that they put a lot of energy into this. And thank you so much to everyone who was on the live stream. I apologize I didn't acknowledge you as much as I should have, but I know you're here and you're with us and we appreciate it. And it's just more incentive to actually be here too. It's really, really amazing to feel all this energy, and we hope you guys felt it at home. And I love you guys. Thank you so much. It was an honor to MC. I appreciate this. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I know.
How about a nice big hand for our amazing MCs, Bobby Joe Cool, Did any of you stay last night and hear her sing? She has the most amazing voice. We were dancing and rocking out. I know some of you were tired and went home, but we had so much fun. So we hope that you'll join us at future gatherings. Look out for them in Golden, Colorado. I think 12/12. There's another gathering happening in Golden, Colorado for the 12/12. And there's a lot of fun stuff in the works for the future, and you're all a part of it. So thank you so much. If you have tickets for the dolphin boats, very specific information for you. We have 2 boats going. The first boat is going tomorrow morning at 11, but I want you to all know that in Dana Point on a Sunday, on a beautiful weekend like this, the parking lot tends to get very full very fast. So please plan adequately and know that the earlier you get there, that just means you have more time to look at the cute little shops and get a cup of coffee there or cup of soup or something. And I like to do the meditation by 10:30 if we can. You will have to go into Dana Wharf Sport Fishing. I think that's what the Octagon building says. It's right in the middle between 2 restaurants in their parking lot. So if you look outside the doors when you go to leave, I did post the directions. I think we've run out of flyers, but you can take a picture with your cell phone and it gives you not only directions, but it also tells you what to bring. You definitely want to dress in layers and have a jacket because it gets cold on the water. You want to have your sunglasses. The sun reflects off the water and sometimes it hurts or burns your eyes. Please bring your instruments, drums, flutes, anything. I said jacket first, yeah. If you want to bring flowers to offer to the water or any crystals to offer to the water, please bring that. We also ask you to bring your smile and your open heart. And then we will be going for a closing circle at Aliso Beach, and the address is on this piece of paper. So we want you to have directions so that you'll know we plan on closing our circle here tonight at Aliso Beach. If any of you didn't get on boat 1 or boat 2, enjoy the day at the beach. Aliso Beach is an amazing beach. It has metered parking. There are fire pits there. If you bring some firewood, you just might get your chief to play a guitar around a fire if he's in the mood. We don't know. We'll see what happens. But we will be sunset at Aliso Beach, and that's just 2 miles south of here. Everybody got that? Okay, how about give yourselves a hand for showing up and being a part of this amazing family. Thank you for helping us clean up. And how did you like this building? Did you love this church? And was this an amazing venue? Yes, thank you. So maybe next year this time, join us back here. I think we can get the building again, and I'd like to make this an annual event if we could. Yes? Yes, I say yes. We can't say that because we don't make plans, but I'm putting it in motion now, and we'll see what happens, okay? Could be 12/12 next year. You never know. Could be 6/6 next year. You never know.
Thank you. Thanks again, everybody. And you can go to the Star Knowledge Enterprises website for the next conferences. We'll definitely be having more, and we really want to come back here for sure. And if anybody does want a copy of the weekend to go back and listen to things again, you can purchase a copy of the live stream as well. So love you guys. Thank you. And thank you so much for helping us clean. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome teamwork.